All right, guys. First off, thank you all for being here. Appreciate you guys coming and joining us for this media luncheon. I always think it's important to bring you guys out before we start spring ball. It's been a tremendous off season, but before we get going too far into this, I want to wish our men's basketball team nothing but the best in the conference tournament. I know, and in the NCAA tournament. I know they're going to do great, and congratulations to them on their championships as well. The guys have been working very hard. I've enjoyed part of this new staff, and obviously the continuity of so many of other staff members as we move forward. A lot of new faces in the program, especially with the players. But it's been a joy to get around them, see how they learn in meetings, and so far in some of the walkthroughs. But really, we don't put on the pads until a week, and excited to get going with spring football and see what we're all about. The spring game is April 26th. Yes, we are doing a spring football game. I see a lot of college football teams opting out of doing that, but we're going to continue to head in that direction. I think it's important and it's great for the fans, so they'll get an opportunity to see their Memphis Tigers. But it's been a great offseason. Excited to keep working, excited to get into spring football and open up to any questions.
Hey, Coach, I heard a novel approach, in the springtime, just like the pros do it in the fall, getting together with like another team. It could be closed so the public can get it, doing some practices within another team for the fall, doing something like that. What's your thoughts on doing something like that possible?
Yeah, it's twofold. So when I was in Minnesota, we used to travel to a place in Wisconsin and practice versus the Chiefs of all teams. And a lot of teams in the NFL still do it. Some are getting away from it. Look, I always think it's great to see how you match up against other teams, right? Especially when you have 15 practices, you get tired of butting heads, and training camp's the same difference. The difference between the NFL and college football is sometimes you can have a little bit more control over what it looks like. In college football, your rosters are pretty big, and especially before the cuts have to occur before the first game. You also worry about it is you lining up a true freshman walk-on going against a veteran player. You worry about quarterbacks getting hurt, all those things. I've heard about that, but Deion Sanders came out and said he'd love to welcome a team to play. Well, like if Colorado, will they be willing to fly down here to Memphis, practice here, pay their own way, stay up in a hotel, and then come play us? That's something certainly I could love to address with our administration, but there's a lot of moving parts to that. With that being said, I'm open to the idea of it, but what does that look like? And then, okay, am I evaluating? So say say the University of Tennessee says, yeah, we'd love to come to Memphis and practice you guys for a couple days. Then do you worry about when the transfer window opens? Hey, you just got a live evaluation of all of our players. You just got a live evaluation of all yours. What does that look like? So there's a lot of moving parts to that. It's easier said than done. I have no problem with the competition, but you also worry about risk of injuries. I mean, there's more and more teams are getting rid of spring games because they worry about tampering. They worry about people evaluating their rosters if the film is out there. They're worried about injuries. That stuff doesn't necessarily affect me, but I just worry about, what are you also trying to get done, right? For us, it's doing the basic fundamentals and how good are we at them if you're not necessarily the same page as a team that's coming and competing with you. But mixed feelings on it for sure.
And in a year like this where you obviously have a quarterback battle after step, how much more important does the spring game come when you're in a year like this?
Every opportunity you get to truly put on pads, right? Like right now we've been running around in underwear and lifting weights and kind of meeting with them, but the opportunity to go out there and see what that looks like with live bullets, Frank, that's really important, right? Every time there's good on good and get to see who comes out and delivers. It's one thing to be able to sit back there. I always talk about the summer 7-on-7 when they're going against each other with no coaches out there, and there's a 5-second clock to be able to throw the football. That's not live football. It's not real thing. So it'll be really good to go out there to see who steps up, right? Who can handle the protections, the play calls, putting them in the right area, who's making the different throws, who handles pressure. So really, really excited. Obviously, we know that's an area that we're going to be evaluating, just like every position. People. It's not like in years past, the last couple of years, where I'm like, hey, Seth Hennigan's our quarterback. We know what Rock Taylor's capable of. We know some of these. Reality, almost every position, they're up for grabs. The few guys that have come back that are returning starters. Xavier Hill, right, is a guy that's played at a really high level. Chris Adams, those type of guys. But, man, reality, there's a lot of competition. So for all these positions, really excited to see who can play, especially at that position.
Coach, to that point, is this the most you've ever, since you've become head coach, the most positions up for grabs is this upcoming year?
Well, every head coach is going to tell you every year starts over, and that's coach speak. But yeah, I think this year more so than ever before, and I don't know if that's going to way it's going to be in college football from here on out with the amount of roster turnover that's occurring. But yeah, I would say this is the most that a lot of unknowns. You see guys, okay, we brought in this young man from the transfer portal, this high school guy. You get to watch the film and evaluate those, but what do they look like in our system? How are they working? How are they understanding? How are they picking things up? So, Greg, for sure, this is a lot of unknowns and excited. That's why, like for spring ball, man, I'm itching to get out there and see what they can do. Whereas normally, okay, hey, I know what these guys are able to do. Let's see how much they learn. No, it's not about scheme this time. It's about seeing who can truly play at a high level.
Well, organizationally, since you do have a lot of, so many guys move on, so many guys move up, how many of the guys that were here, are there enough guys here that know how you like to do it or know, the rhythm that you like to go to lead the other ones that are coming?
That's a great question, Jarvis. That's the number one concern, I think, by any head coach, especially mine. Like, you bring them in, right? One, what's the camaraderie look like? And then what's the culture look like? And so it's my job. It's really easy when you bring in a guy that's a freshman and you've got a senior that's been here a fifth year and you have 90 guys that know, hey, this is exactly how Coach Silverfield does things. This is exactly how we work out. This is exactly how we do. This is how we behave in society. This is what we do academically. Well, now all of a sudden you bring in 50% new players and it's reteaching them, hey, guys, this is what all in is about. This is the way we do things. This is the way we dress. This is the way we treat women. And so those are the things that you teach them. This is the culture that we've been able to create that ultimately leads to wins. And so every single day we're reteaching that and saying, okay, hey, this is what we're all that. And credit to those guys that have come in and credit to the rest of the staff. They've done a phenomenal job of what I talk about pouring into these guys, teaching them the ways we do things. And credit to those guys that have been here in the past saying, hey, listen, just so you know, this is the way we do things. This is our standards. This is how we're going to do it. And they hold each other accountable. And so I'm very, very fortunate for some of those guys that have been here in the past and the rest of the staff that does a tremendous job handling that and making sure our culture is talked about every single day.
Is there an estimated time of for the quarterback battle? You want to at least narrow it down to these two guys? Do you have that in your head?
Yeah, so you're going to get sick of this answer. I'll let you know at the end of August. Does that sound good? No, I mean, look, you're gonna get some ideas of who can do what and what they're capable of. As we go through this thing, right? Like, Arrington Madden, you got one play. Like, I'm really excited to see. I know we can do it practice, but I've not, here you go. Let's see what you look like running with the first team. Brandon Lewis, like, I've seen what you're capable of doing on film and been around you now, and he started 36 games. But how does it fit with this offense, right? AJ Hill. Okay, I've watched you play live, and you're a stud. But welcome to the big leagues, right? I mean, it's no different than we threw 7-10 against a 17-year-old. Like, what's it going to look like? With Harrison, like, okay, hey, I've seen you practice, I've seen you lead, I've seen you. Now here we go. So I'm not going to sit here and put a timetable on it, Frank. Now, if one guy all of a sudden emerges and you're like, holy cow, sure. But I think all four are capable of playing at a very, very high level, and I'm excited because I think it's going to bring out the best of them. They also understand what it's all about. And so it's about every single day to be the best version of yourselves, and that's with every position. But, yeah, that quarterback one, we'll see where it goes. I don't think at the end of spring we're going to sit there and say, okay, here's who you got.
And what was it about Brendan that caused you to want to go grab him out of the portal?
Yeah, whenever we're looking at quarterbacks, first and foremost, especially in the portal, right, with his experience, it speaks volumes for itself, right? You start 36 games in college football. He's smart and he's hardworking. So, hey, you guys know in the past we've always brought in hardworking quarterbacks that have high intellect, and he checks those boxes. He certainly does. I mean, he's done a great job since the day he's been here. But even prior to that, those conversations on the phone when we brought him here on the visit, the way he's able to, his football acumen, it's fantastic. And then then you go and put it on the film. You're like, he's got a unique skill set. He's a very, very good football player, and I think he molds well and fits well with what we want to do here offensively.
Coach Moore, roster cuts. What number are you at now? What number do you have to get to, and how does the spring portal impact that?
Yeah, we are at a very large number. All right.
You have the number?
Yeah, well, I'll show that after the roster cuts what that number was. Now, we are, just like every college football program, we are over the number that's going to be expected to be voted on and passed, right? People are going to ask about what the decision here in a few weeks. so much of that's out of my control, right? Like, hey, what are your thoughts on the house settlement, all those things? Way above my pay grade. Once we start to understand what that looks like, we'll have a better understanding. Right now, the talk is right that the rosters have to get to 105. On paper, we are over that number. Spring is a great evaluation, and I think part of that is, Sam was having a conversation with a young man and saying, look, maybe it's 10 practices in when that spring portal window opens, and saying, hey, look, maybe it's not the best situation for you. Or a young man may come to me and say, look, coach, I understand that maybe I'm not good enough to play at the University of Memphis. I'd like to explore the other options. And those are the type of candid conversations you want to have. I always try to be truthful and forthright with our guys. You also hear about a bunch of teams that are going to have, 130 scholarship guys, and 2 nights before the first game, they're just going to cut a bunch of guys because that's what this has come into, and that's what the NCAA is allowing. So we'll see. It's certainly changed into a crazy deal. It kind of reminds me more and more of like the NFL. Like, all right, hey, last preseason game, we're going, but the spring is going to be a great time for us to evaluate. And it's not just what they do on the field, like how well do they learn the offense? Are they fitting well? Are they understanding the culture? Because we have to evaluate everything. And if all of a sudden it's a big difference, last year in training camp, we went out there with 120 guys, and our in-season Title IX number was 127. So you'd see 127 guys run out of the tunnel on game day. This year, if the vote passes, it's going to be 105 and 22 players. That's a big difference. I think our equipment manager may appreciate that and like me a little bit more. And the food budget may go down slightly, but it's certainly unique as we do it. I think we have more and more meetings as a staff, not just on watching the film together, but like truly eval of our roster and where we need to possibly move and make changes.
Hey,
Coach,
Coach,
where's, go ahead.
administratively, with the new change with the NIL, with the guys coming in, can you, does that allow you to lock them in without the fear of them leaving that season with the being able to get them on the front end and signing something and committing them versus beforehand, everything just with words and nothing was on paper?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's the commitments, right, which we know a commitment means absolutely nothing.
Right.
Then there was the signing of the letter of intent, but they've now gone away from that, right, the national letter of intent. And so what is that going to look like? People can sign NIL contracts, but I don't know with what merit they hold, right? We've seen players suing schools. We've seen a lot of things and variations from that. Ultimately, if a young man doesn't want to be here, I'm not going to sit there and say you need to be here because it's not going to work out. He's going to be unhappy. I'm going to be unhappy. I'm a firm believer of that, right? It's like any relationship, right? If your girlfriend don't want to be with you and you're begging her to stay, it ain't going to last, right? Let's just call it what it is. It's no different than a player. If a player's sitting there saying, I don't want any part of this, it's good. No different when Brad Pope was part of a tag team. Like if his tag team partner didn't want to be in the wrestling wing with him, it wasn't going to work out for a championship. Exactly right. So that's the nature of it. And so look, and that's why I appreciate about our guys. Like, come talk to me. Hey, coach, this isn't what I thought it was, or I thought I was going to have the opportunity to start. This is, man, we're more competitive. Or, hey, I don't like the way you coach and the way you do things, so it's better for opportunities. And I think those candid conversations, Terry, have been huge. But ultimately, I don't know if there's anything that ultimately locks a player to a school, right? That's why they're another transfer window. That's why they're guys that will be going on their 6th or 7th school come the spring. And I don't know if that's what it was intended for, but right now the young men have the ability to do that, and so be it.
Coach, what is Sutton's health status right now? It's been a few months. Where does he stand, and is he there where he can actually participate in the spring?
Yeah, Sutton's he's done a phenomenal job. As you guys remember, he got hurt in the first quarter of the first game, but he he's such a hard worker and determined to get back to full health. We're going to hold him as a full participant in spring, so he won't be, but he'll be on the sideline. He'll be paying attention. I'm sure we'll see him in the background. You guys that come out to practice, doing the steps and all that stuff. But the full expectation is when we get really rolling up in June that he is a full go without limitations. Obviously, coming off a significant knee injury, what does that look like moving forward? But he's been working his tail off. He's been doing all the rehabilitation. If I know anything about that young man, he'll come back better than ever.
Thank you, Coach.
Is anybody? I'll answer a couple more. I don't mind. Yeah, why not? Come on, we got some questions. Yeah, let's do this. They were kind enough to come on out and visit. I'm okay.
Why those guys aren't on the, you go ahead.
So,
Going back to the quarterback.
As long as there's no tough questions. If they're tough, then
We'll skip it.
or time.
But honestly, I know you've already, said aren't going to be any decisions before spring about a quarterback. But since Seth ran the show for so many years here, and you have so much talent in that room now, how good is a problem is that for you as a coach, where you can kind of, dial it up as much as you want?
And I think that's great. And I was able to sit back and I share with our staff, especially those guys that have been here before, like a lot of positions, like, we've got a lot of depth here. And like very rarely in college football this day and age can you say we got depth in the quarterback room, right? Like guys will hear me talk about like depth in the O-line and D-line room is huge and hard to find in college football. So is depth in college football. It's at the quarterback room because it's really, really hard to keep that many quarterbacks. And there's only one on the field now. Maybe, the first game of the season, we'll go out there with 3 quarterbacks on the field as a surprise to start the season. But yeah, you only got one of them on the field, but they're all capable, and that's a nice feeling. I'd be a little bit worried if I was up here and you guys saw my hand shake, and I was like, yeah, our quarterbacks are nice kids. Like they're not very talented. No, they're really talented. They all are capable, and that allows me to sleep comfortably at night.
We haven't asked much about the defense. Obviously, they haven't been on the field, but from a size and measurement standpoint, how are you liking what the roster looks
Yeah,
like?
Frank, you're exactly right. This will be the most length we've had on the defense side of the ball, right? Like the speed, the athleticism, the length. I can sit out there and say, holy cow, man, they really look the part. Now, can they play football? We brought in a lot of guys that have the measurables that sit there and check a lot of the boxes that way. But are they capable of playing football, right? Some of these guys have played a certain amount of reps at a school, but does that mean it translates over to being the ability to compete for a full-time starting job? So that's what I'm really intrigued by. I've got a good understanding of what we have in every position room, but man, I'm going to be spending a lot of time just truly evaluating the defense this spring, getting an idea, okay, what is this guy actually doing? But the measurables are there. They can run, and I think they'll be able to play in a physical demeanor. But now, can they go out there and perform day in and day out? Can they actually cover? Can they go out there and make the tackles? Can they do those things? But they certainly look the part.
How huge was it to retain Whitlow for that defense?
Yeah, Wayne Whitlow's a young man. This day and age, you guys know, it's so hard to recruit a kid out of high school, right? To develop that relationship as a sophomore, junior, whatever compliance allows us to start having those conversations, or a kid come visit campus, and to get to know a kid from 16 years old, and to have him say, okay, I'm going to stay and be committed to a school. And reality of it is, I think all along this is where he wanted to be. But so many other people say, well, hey, the cool thing is it's what the cool kids are doing. They're going in the portal. Oh, you're at a group of 5. You should. And in reality, at the end of the day, he knew this is where he wanted to be. And it wasn't a lot of begging. I love William Whitlow. And the way he plays, it's huge, right? I mean, we know a first-team all-conference player like that that's saying, you know what, I want to be a part of Memphis. He's a low young man. I'm going to finish where I started. I absolutely love it. And he's tremendous. He's going to be the heartbeat of that defensive line. And so excited he decided to finish what he started.
Getting back to the measurables, was that the intent during the offseason to go after that?
I think, I think the success of the teams in the past, of the other people in the past, players were attracted to this, right? Like it wasn't, a lot of times you're out there, man, you're fishing. We got some guys that were getting some interest from other schools saying, I want to kind of be a part of what y'all are doing. That maybe in the years past, we were trying to go with that kid that was 6'2", and the 5'8" kid was saying, hey, come on, I'd like to come play for you. And now you're getting interest from those guys with the measurables. Now, it is pretty interesting. I go and to tie this in with Pro Day. I look at some of our best players and most productive players we had on our roster last year, and their Pro Day numbers are nothing to be like shooting stars at, and then you look and they're really productive for us. So we got to be careful just going for measurables, right? It's the old Mike Mamula. Some of you guys are too young to remember who Mike Mamula was. You have no idea what I'm talking about, Sam. Yeah, Mike Mamula was an okay college player, but, man, he was a stud at the combine. Looked pretty, ran well, tall, and but it never added up to the field. So we got to make sure we're not just chasing the tall, pretty ones. We got to go after the productive ones.
Hey, Coach, leadership you lost on both sides of the ball.
Last one.
Chandler and Seth.
Yes, sir.
How do you fill that void? Do you use spring to do it, or you let it happen organically?
Great question, Terry. I think that's part of it. Is a lot of it is stepping back and seeing who the leaders are. And what's unique is a couple weeks ago we were in a team meeting, and I stood up there and I said, okay, And I didn't even, just walking down, I said, here's what I'm going to do. I didn't tell the staff. I said, all right, raise your hand if you think you're a leader. And you have a lot of guys that shot their hands up immediately. And then you had some others looking around. And you always know those are the ones, and kind of turtle shell, their arms kind of T-Rex sticking out saying, I think I'm one. And I wrote those names down, and I asked those guys, what makes you a leader? Why are you a leader? And what I'm found is every year that I'm here and every year that as I get older, and you sit there and say, man, these guys that were, elementary when we first got going in this place, they think being a leader is just, hey, I show up and I work hard. Well, that's the minimum expectation to play college football, showing up and work hard. Everybody in the country is showing up and working hard. I don't care what program you're at, Notre Dame, Hawaii, wherever, they're all showing up to work hard. So I'm kind of waiting to see what makes them think that they're true leaders, like separates themselves. Yes, you can see some of that in workouts. You can see some of that in meetings, community service. But ultimately, when you go out there for practice, what's that going to look like? What are those conversations when some adversity hits, Terry? So, yeah, I'm going to let it happen organically, but you get to see a lot when you actually go out there on the practice field. And then a lot to see, how do they work together? And then I think sometimes those natural leaders step up. I've learned over my years, and it was shame on me as an early head coach. Well, let them figure it out. Now you have to teach, hey, this is how you lead. This is what it truly means. And that's one of the things hopefully I've gotten better at is, okay, hey, let me help you, show you what this should look like on a day-to-day. But ultimately, you'd love to see those guys kind of figure it out on their own, and we'll continue to go in that right direction. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.